I had asked Andrea, and she bravely, she's a very brave individual, so she bravely said yes. I wanted to address something that we're working on in our own tax business, which is to basically create a process, like a step-by-step process for mostly S corporation tax prep, but really any business entity where it involves a balance sheet, an entity return, and kind of the I guess like companies with revenue 500,000 and up. Those kinds of companies where it's a pretty significant, their tax return can be a significant amount of work. So what we're having a challenge with in my company is, so like myself and Cynthia, my other partner, are on the point of like that small business owner point that like whatever happens, you can always figure out a way to to get the job done, right? But what's happening is as we're having other team members who are taking in those kinds of business clients, we are not doing as good of a job as we want to do, of giving that person a process to work through. And so that they can effectively and efficiently do that work and serve that client, as well as be supported, by our senior team, and where we can kind of log into the process, see where they're at, and not have them try to figure everything out on the fly. So what I had asked Andrea to do is, I wanted to kind of go over what the process document that I'm building, and then intake, kind of from Andrea, as well as from anybody else that has comments, is at the end of this, I want to come away with like an actual process document that shows step by step what should be happening. And I want to get perspective from Andrea and from other tax pros. So with that being said, I wanted to launch a little poll at the beginning here. Imelda, if you can launch that. I want to say before I launch this poll that for myself, the answer to these questions is all no. So don't feel like we try to do it's a no judgment zone as far as like, feeling like, oh, I have to say this or I should have this done. We want to just have like candid, conversation around it. So the first question is, I have a step-by-step process that I use for preparing S corporation tax returns. Would this be true or would this be false? Like I said, for myself, it's actually false. So I'm just going to let you know so you don't feel any judgment. And then secondly, the process that I use for preparing S corporation tax returns is written down, recorded on video, or otherwise transferable to another person who could follow my process in a step-by-step manner. As I just said, for me, that's I'm going to go with false on that as well. And then for this part of it, the fees, what is the average fee that you're charging for an S corporation tax prep, as well as for that client's 1040? And just ballpark is fine, just to kind of see where we are here. And I'm hoping with this question, it'll give an idea of the opportunity side of it. Like if you had another teammate who could do this kind of work, how would that impact what that teammate could earn, the revenue that you would have into your business from that teammate, and just kind of the value piece of it. So whenever you guys are ready, just quick submit those answers, and let's kind of see what we are. Let me show you guys. Let me show you where I'm at right now on my document. Overall, Andrea, does what I said just make sense or resonate? I know you have a bunch of team members that you're managing as well. Does this resonate with you?
It does indeed. We don't have fully fleshed out processes. We do use Jetpack workflow for our task management. And like, for example, our 1120S prep job that we set up for clients is very detailed. I was just looking at it and it's got 40 steps.
Okay, interesting.
So that part of it is documented, but I don't know. I just feel like it's not like the whole process isn't documented. That's literally just preparing that return, but there's things that happen before it and there are things that happen after prep. And that's the piece that I think we're a little bit lacking. And your document addresses a lot of that stuff. So this will be fun.
Yeah, interesting. So Jetpack workflow so imagine I'm your teammate and I'm assigned a client, an S Corp to prepare the tax return, right? I'm going to go into Jetpack workflow and am I going to kind of check off the steps that I do
Yep.
Okay. And do people actually use that and follow that?
Oh yeah, we require it. All of our teammates, every job that we do for every client has a task. Well, in Jetpack, they're called jobs. Everything we do for every client has a job in Jetpack, and that's followed every month or whatever period the work is done, semi-monthly, bi-weekly, weekly. So we do find that helpful, and it makes it so if we have to move work among the staff, it makes it easier to transition a client because that client's job has been customized to what we actually do for that client in most cases. Some cases they haven't been fully customized for that client yet, but the basic steps are there at least. And that has been a years-long process getting that built out. Like this, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? This has been a process.
Yeah, because we prefer in my company to build processes that people don't actually follow. That's the key thing.
We have those too.
You got to build out a 40 thing checklist and then make sure that people don't actually use it. It's usually the preferred way. But okay, interesting. So as we go through this, you guys, I'm gonna kind of show you like what we're doing as I'm trying to train our teammates with a process that they actually will follow and that they buy into and want to use, right? That actually makes their life better, as opposed to feeling like you have to force someone to do something that they don't want to do, but to actually enable them, empower them, by the process. So I'm going to take some notes of Andrea's thoughts as we go through it. Imelda, maybe for people that are in the chat, it's hard for me to like maintain the things, like multiple things at one time. So if you could, if somebody has something that I should plug into this as a note, because at the end of this, what I'd like to do, you guys, is deliver a document to all of the members with input from various pros and even within the group, so that everybody, if you want to take and build out your process however you want it, you're not starting from zero. Awesome. And so maybe Imelda, could you launch the poll results real quick just before I totally forget about that? Okay. So it looks like we have a lot of people in the same category as me, where we might be more on a figure it out basis rather than using a standard process. So only 17%. Even though I know you guys do a lot of these types of returns, but only 17% step-by-step process. And in terms of documenting the process, only 5%. Again, no judgment. It's just reality. And then opportunity-wise, in terms of the revenue, looks like majority of people are $1,500-ish between. So that's if we imagine a teammate that could do 40 of these returns a year, 50 or 100 a year, if you multiply that by the average fee, and what we're finding among our members is there's usually one person in the business that knows how to do this kind of work. And it's usually the person that's on this meeting right now. So if you can add other people within the business that can do this kind of work, and you can multiply that by the fee amount, hopefully that kind of and that's what I'm looking at on our business, is like, this is a major revenue opportunity, but it's only an opportunity for us if I feel like the work is actually being done to a really good degree, and so that's what kind of building this process, the goal of it is. So thanks to everybody that participated in the poll. Andrea, could you, and even this too, like, the rapport piece of it, like we find that, and I know for myself being a business owner, is that most business owners are not excited to deal with tax stuff, right? So can you talk a little bit about, and not only yourself with you can build rapport with a client by your personality, by being a business owner yourself, but other teammates, like the client usually, like we find when we dive right into like the technical aspect of requesting all these documents, we don't do any rapport or warm up. It kind of like depletes a little bit of the experience. Do you feel that way, or how do you handle that?
I do. And, back before I made a bunch of the changes that have been made the last few years, we were a higher volume practice. So we had a lot of those once per year tax clients, like a lot of you have. And I did find it challenging to build a relationship with a client that you're only talking to once a year for maybe an hour, right? A lot of these returns aren't that complicated for us. And so we can get through them pretty quickly. And so part of pivoting my business model is that we have multiple touch points with clients throughout the year ahead of tax season. So by the time we get to the compliance work where we have to give them a to-do list that they don't really want to deal with, we've already communicated with them a couple of times. They've already gotten to talk to us and ask us questions. We've already been collecting some of that information, which lessens the amount of things we have to collect from them during tax season. And so it's a little bit different business model. I would say the answer will vary based on whether you're more of a compliance practice versus a like planning practice. Both are great. Both can be really successful tax practices, right? You can make a ton of money doing compliance work. I love what I call a simple tax return. Like, give me a stack of W-2s, maybe a couple of 1099s. I will bang those returns out all day long. But I got to the point where I realized I couldn't have that client relationship like I wanted because I had to have 600 of those. So I love that kind of return, but I didn't love that kind of client relationship. I couldn't figure out a way to bridge that gap with the client relationship piece and stay a high volume compliance practice. If there's anyone here who's figured that out, I would be all ears. I would love to hear it.
Yeah, I think for us, and definitely anybody that also, if you want to unmute yourself and like comment on any of this stuff, it's more than welcome. We're the total opposite of what Andrea just said. You know, like, we're not doing the bookkeeping on an ongoing basis. For most clients, even an S Corp client that, you know, like, we may have a couple touch points during the year, they have a question or we offer some advice or something. But, you know, we find that to most of these business clients are really focused on their business. And so just asking them, how's business? How's your family? You know, how's life in general? What were the big things for this year for your business? And just getting on the level of being actually interested in their business. And it doesn't have to take a lot of time, but just to start with that rather than getting straight into the technical, let me hassle you for all these documents. I think this is actually a really important step if you're not in contact with the clients more so. And I think for the like, the reason I wanted to have this in the document is that, like, an employee, they don't think the same way as the owner, because this will come more naturally to the owner because you know how important it is to the client experience, and you want to retain the client, maximize the value. Whereas employees, we find that we have to put this actually in our process and tell people, don't skip over this. This is super important. Like, try to understand what are the changes with the person's business. Like, do they have a new competitor? Do they have, you know, are their sales way up? Are their sales way down? And just doing that first. So we find for us, this is a super important part of the process.
And we actually have a client care director, and one of her tasks is to send periodic check-ins with clients. And it's not a check-in that requires them to send us anything. It's not a to-do list. It's just a, hey, hope everything is going well. Hope your business is successful, or whatever the wording is. We change it a little bit each time, but it's really just a, hey, just checking in on you. Don't forget we're here if you need us. Simple, short, doesn't take a lot of time. The client doesn't know that same email went out to 50 other people. And it kind of keeps us top of mind, right? Like, especially if you're doing mostly tax return work, you do kind of still want to stay top of mind. You want them to know that they can reach out to you during the off season if they have questions. You want to keep being their go-to person. And so that quick little email, one sentence, can help to keep you at the top of their inbox, kind of, right? Like, just little, don't forget I'm here if you need me.
Yeah, I think when you start to work with a client and you realize that, wow, this person really does not want to see me or interact with me. Their idea of a good time would be if they were not doing what we're about to do. And so to somehow, try to get beyond that at the beginning of the process, we think is super important. So I appreciate the perspective, Andrea, on your kind of different business model. Now, I think most people, and I've heard this a bunch of times from members of the group, is that if the clients would only give me what I need, things would work a lot better, be more efficient, that kind of thing. So when it goes to requesting what we need, how do you handle that, Andrea? And then also I'm going to share a couple of resources that we have for you guys, in this area. How do you handle the document request?
I think this is probably like the number one stress point in every tax practice, right? Like no matter how much you train your clients and how good of a relationship you have with them, you're always waiting on them for something. So we use TaxDome. And those of you who have been following along with me for more than a year may recall that I didn't use TaxDome, but then I acquired a firm that used it. So now I use TaxDome, and I will say the organizers that we send out, that I just sent out now that it's the beginning of tax season, really do help walk the client through what information we need. And it includes in various places where they can click to upload that document. So it keeps it very organized and orderly. We have a practice policy where that requires that we don't start the tax return until the organizer is complete. So we won't even start the return work until the client has actually completed the organizer, which will at least require them to take the time to go through and click some boxes. Even if they speed their way through it and don't give us all of the info, they've at least taken some of the time, and that kicks off the process. It doesn't solve all of it, right? There are still clients that we have to chase, and we have to remind them to do their organizer, and we have to remind them to actually attach the documents. So I haven't found a way to get 100% compliance on this, but I do find that having that organizer as part of our required process does eliminate some of that. Hey, you haven't sent us any documents. Hey, you haven't sent us your W-2s, because it's all part of that process. It's mostly training.
And so say they have something, Andrea, that in the organizer doesn't pertain to them. Do they just put like NA or something like that, or your team marks it off as not? Because, the clients say maybe they don't, or do they just say you must complete every step before we do anything?
Yeah, so every box is a required field, and most of them are like a yes or a no. And if they click yes, it opens up, okay, upload that document here. So if it doesn't apply to them, they just click no, and then it moves on. So it's a dynamic organizer, which is the power of some of these softwares, right? It's not like the old paper organizer that we used to send out, or a PDF organizer that some of us still send out. It does adjust for what the client answers, which I think helps a little bit. We do still get some pushback. And this is a thing that I didn't have time to fix before this tax season, but I will before next tax season. Because we have evolved, and now we're talking to clients throughout the season, because all of our clients are in packages that include at least one projection. Some of the questions in that organizer are redundant. We already know because we've already talked about it. And so I need to go back through and revamp the organizer to cut out the things that we're talking to them about through the year, because we don't want the client doing so much work that they feel like they could just input it into TurboTax themselves, right? That's one of the complaints we hear. Like, if I was going to do all this, I could just do my own return on TurboTax. So we're trying to reduce that client friction. We're trying to figure out the balance where we get all of the required information, but it's not as much work on the client side. Like, we can't do everything for them, but we can make it a little bit easier, especially since we are talking to them throughout the year. So we're still trying to find that balance. Even this is my 11th tax season, and I'm still trying to figure it out. Like, we still haven't found the perfect secret sauce yet.
Yeah, because you may already, since you have direct access and sounds like in all cases to their books, you'll be on as a user to be able to do a lot of shortcutty type things where, like, as a business client myself, I would really like for that to happen. Like, if you could slim down everything as much as you can, you guys already have a lot of the stuff. That's
Exactly.
appreciated from the client side. So a couple of resources I want to make sure people have. We're trying to do a better job. This was actually one of the things we talked about in the mentor meeting is there's a lot of resources that we have in your program that people that we're not telling people about well enough. And so I shared a couple of resources there about this document request stage. So say you're, you hear that that Andrea is using TaxDome to do the organizer, right? Like, I shared Adam Shea's document request that he shared with us, as well as my own that I've built out. So if you're either building this process for yourself, this initial document request, whether it's in TaxDome, whatever system it's in, or even if it's just in an email, right, or a PDF or a Word document, those might be some kind of ready-made materials that you could look at your process and maybe improve. And in general, you guys, for those types of like plug and play, not reinventing the wheel, that kind of thing, there's a course in your program, in your membership called Tax Business Templates. So you have a lot of templates in there of different things that it took us a long time to develop, or somebody like Andrea or Adam, that you guys can plug and play. So we want to do a better job of kind of letting people know about that. I also wanted to highlight a comment from Michelle that I thought was relevant is by asking those few questions, the client will give more information that'll be helpful to plan and catch things they might not have told you otherwise. So that's definitely.
Like just imagine, say you have a once a year tax client and tax season is very condensed, right? So you're learning that they bought a business, sold a business, bought a car for their business, right? You're learning all this stuff. Just imagine if, say, around October, you shot them all an email to say, hey, just checking in, tax season's coming. Let us know if anything's changed. Very simple, but they might be like, oh yeah, I forgot. I need to tell them about this, or I should let them know I had a kid, or I don't know, right? Like a simple little check-in might spur them to start feeding you some information. You can be making notes, and then you already know that come tax time, that's that much less information you have to gather during your 100 days of tax season.
Yeah.